Have you begun to realize where you are yet? And who I am? Or are you still so delirious and confused that you think you're a night guard? You'll understand. And even if you don't, it doesn't matter to me either way.
With the release of the game 5 Laps at Freddy's, we got this oddly familiar car called Midnight Motor. This was important because its spring body antenna seemingly confirmed that William Afton was a driver in the Midnight Motorist minigame. At the same time though, this car confused much of the FNaF community as it included these hanging fuzzy dice with the numbers 8 and 7 on them, numbers that aren't standardly there.
Surely Scott knew that including that as a detail would heavily imply Midnight Motorist took place in 1987, right? Unless that was his intention.
You see, Scott has gone on record to say how he doesn't like adding random dates to officially marketed FNaF things. Quote, even a detail as small as an EST 1983 on a t-shirt, I'll say, no, don't include an established date because that confuses the lore.
Honestly, that's really interesting, especially since there's a specific detail in the Midnight Motorist minigame that we've been overlooking as a community. The car's speed is capped at 200 miles per hour.
Oh hey, look at that! The first manufactured car that reached 200 miles per hour was created in 1987.
Yup. We even saw another hint of this back in Security Breach. There's a gasoline pump in that game that reads Octane 87, and it happens to be beside some blocks resembling a purple car.
My name is Andre.
And my name is Jeremy.
And today, we're going to tell you how we solved Midnight Motorist, actually. So let's start by clarifying something. Even though Midnight Motorist happens in 1987, Charlie still has to die in 1983. We know this because of the puppet memory plush that's found from typing the year on a keypad in Help Wanted 2. 1983 is also the same year as Charlie's death year in the novels, and Henry's "A wound first inflicted on me" line during the FNaF 6 Insanity ending implies that Charlie was the first to die.
But what about the fact that Midnight Motorist uses the same rain sprite as the security puppet minigame? Doesn't that prove it happened in 1983?
Not necessarily. Why would Scott make a new rain sprite in the same game just to differentiate what day it was raining? Plus, rain isn't a direct indicator for a specific date anyway, since many other minigames in FNaF have rain as well, like Follow Me and Hallway Crawl.
That does make sense.
As a community, FNaF fans have never been able to form a solid order of events around Midnight Motorist, and we think that's because our fundamental building blocks have all been wrong. It was never supposed to be the night of Charlie's death. It was supposed to take place in 1987, later the night of the DCI. The description for the Midnight Motorist in 5 Laps at Freddy's coincidentally supports this by saying, talk about a killer ride. This smooth cruiser is the perfect choice for anyone wanting to flee a crime scene or win a race.
Wouldn't Midnight Motorist happening in 1987 also make it so every Lorekeeper ending minigame shows a different incident?
Security Puppet shows Charlie's death in 1983, Freddy Maze shows the MCI in 1985, and Midnight Motorist shows the DCI in 1987.
We all know Midnight Motorist happens at midnight, hence the name. But the nighttime setting of the minigame matches the shift of FNaF 2's night guards, as William was the one who had the night shift before Jeremy took on the role.
You're only the second guard to work at that location. The first guy finished his week but complained about conditions. We switched him over to the day shift. So, hey, lucky you, right? When we get it all sorted out, we may move you to the day shift. The position just became available.
A user by the name of Spring Bonnie 87. Fitting, right? Found out that all the bodies and saved them were explicitly hidden from the camera's view. This implies that William not only deleted the camera footage of him killing the kids, but specifically hid the bodies as well, so that their date of origin couldn't immediately be traced back to the previous security guard, or him.
Not long after murdering the DCI children, William makes his way to Junior's, which we believe is supposed to be the bar that Fredbear's was made into, as shown by this quote from the Silver Eyes. There was a slightly elevated stage at the end of the room, and Charlie realized as she looked around that the place had probably once been a dance hall, and the long desk by the entrance that her parents had used for a cash register had probably been a bar. She went over to it and saw that she was right. There were even grooves and scratches in the wood floor where bar stools had once dug their feet. She tried to picture it, a dark bar with a country western band playing on the stage, but she could not. A country western band, huh? That sounds familiar. Looking at the graphic novel version of the Silver Eyes, you're able to notice that the Fredbear's building looks like the Midnight Motorist sprite for Juniors, and if we compare the FNaF 4 minigame map with the map of Midnight Motorist, they align perfectly. Now, we know many people tend to mention these minigames aren't one-to-one, but FNaF minigames have previously been known to be simplified. One of the worst perpetrators of this is Foxy Go Go Go, which simplifies the Private's Cove area and the safe room into just 2 rooms. If you still need more proof that Juniors is the repurposed Fredbears, the bar has a new addition in 5 Laps at Freddy's, these 2 big red doors on the establishment's right side. Where have we seen these doors? In FNaF 4, where they have been the entrance to Fredbears. The 3D model of Juniors shows that the back wall has no window, which is something we see in FNaF 4 as well, as Fredbears. Scott included those details on Juniors because Midnight Motorist didn't happen in 1983, but 1987, when Fredbears was no longer around. Additionally, this acts as further proof that Midnight Motorist takes place much longer after Charlie's death, which we know happens at Fredbears.
While we're on the topic of Fredbears and Juniors, the bar being repurposed would make the owner Henry, who we believe to be the green guy from Midnight Motorist. In the minigame, the green guy doesn't seem like an unimportant bouncer. Instead, he talks to William with a sense of familiarity. Come on, you know you can't be here. Don't make this more difficult than it has to be. This apparent ban of William from Juniors would make sense if Midnight Motorist happened in 1987. By then, Henry would already suspect William for his daughter's death, and the MCI, especially if he was convicted. His appearance in Midnight Motorist would also serve as a direct visual for one of Phone Guy's FNaF 2 lines.
Yeah, we're going to try to contact the original restaurant owner. I think the name of the place was Fredbear's Family Diner or something like that. It was closed for years, though. I doubt we'll be able to track anybody down.
In the same vein, the Emilys are profoundly connected to the color green. Both the security puppet and Charlie are connected to green, and although not confirmed to be Charlie, the finger trap girl in FNaF 4 is eerily similar to her. She has a green shirt, a rabbit toy like the book Charlie has, and a red heart on her shirt that corresponds with Henry's description of her nature to protect the innocent. Not only is her shirt green, but her text color is too, and her second line of dialogue implies that she is a father who creates things for her.
Also, in FNaF UCN, we see an advertisement featuring children that some believe represents Susie, Charlie, and the Vengeful Spirit's face. The brown-haired girl people believe represents Charlie has a heart on her shirt.
The couch person is the second to last NPC from Midnight Motorist we haven't discussed yet, but we already know who he is. Michael. Michael has an association with watching TV, and him and the couch person have the same gray shirt and same gray text color. If William's text color remains the same between FNaF 4 and Midnight Motorist, why shouldn't his? The idea of Midnight Motorist taking place in 1987 additionally addresses a concern people had about him being the couch person. Him speaking to William bluntly. 4 years have gone by now, and people can change a lot in that span of time, especially after experiencing trauma.
As a couch person, Michael tells William to leave the Runaway alone for the night, implying he has been constantly putting him through something, maybe something like the nightmare experiments.
Wait. How could Dave be the Runaway when he died back in 1983?
Look back at Final Speaker's final line to Dave. I will put you back together. This isn't an empty promise. Later in the FNaF World teaser images, we get this follow-up line. He put the pieces back together. We already know that William was experimenting with his experiments based on 2 things. The first was a connection MatPat made, the presence of these humanoid heads in the Sea Bear bunker. These heads suggest that William was trying to figure out how to create humanoid robots or maybe bring characters back to life. Elizabeth is the one with green eyes, Michael has blue eyes, and Dave has the closed eyes. The second thing that shows us William was experimenting is the book Dittophobia. In that book, it's stated that the FNaF 4 nightmares are fear experiments, which we know Dave had to have been put through. The IV bag and flowers that can rarely appear beside the FNaF 4 bed connect the bite victim to the nightmares, as does the FNaF Encyclopedia, where it features a picture of Dave with either Nightmare or Nightmare Fredbear behind him. Although we know the encyclopedia can be an inaccurate source, that seems to apply mainly to the text rather than the images, since Henry's design from the book is shown again within the Into the Pit game. Dave being put through fear experiments makes sense, especially if you consider the reason why. William is trying to make his son whole again. Dave is William's experiment. We can even directly connect this to Midnight Motorist because, like we mentioned earlier, Hallway Crawl has rain happening during the same time as the Nightmare experiments, with the exit of this minigame being the FNaF 4 bedroom as empty, which is the case because Dave ran off.
There's a certain Halloween-themed DLC from the games that has some valuable information for us as well.
Keep in mind that this DLC pack is nothing more than a festive holiday-themed add-on, which has absolutely no hidden intent or purpose. So, have fun!
Yeah, right. The Curse of Dread Road DLC is so obviously about the bite victim that it's almost crushing. Not only is the title and name of the subsequent character a pun on the name Fredbear, but the entire game is riddled with other references to the bite. There's a birthday cake, some of the snacks include Bite Late Night and Eat and Cry, and many of the mini-games are even direct references to FNaF 4. The minigame that we're looking for specifically, though, is the Fredbear minigame, in which the player is made to reassemble Fredbear like Frankenstein.
Welcome back to Research and Development. Today, we are using science to pervert the mysteries of life and reanimate the inanimate.
The phrasing here is key. We're reanimating something, or bringing something back to life. And we're doing that by calibrating Fredbear's brain, which just so happens to be the organ that Dave is so closely associated with.
This whole connection we've made is even referenced in the Ultimate Guide when it says, certain fans have drawn a connection between FNaF 4's I Will Put You Back Together and the theming around Fredbear. The idea of taking something inanimate, something dead, and giving it new life through an animatronic rang more than a few bells for theorists. We've seen some definite mad scientist moments from William Afton, particularly in the fourth closet, but whether this is just an interesting idea or a spooky tale that could be dropping a hint remains to be seen. The reference to the fourth closet is very intriguing because a major plot twist of that book is that Charlie, the main character that we've been following throughout the trilogy, is actually a robot and was kidnapped and killed by William as a young child. Henry, distraught from his daughter's death, built 4 robot versions of her that represent different stages of her life. These different robots were kept inside of the titular 4 closets. It's very likely that a similar thing is happening with Dave, especially since this is exactly what we see in FNaF 4. With 4 closets in the plush trap hallway. Sister Location's breaker room map even shows that there's 4 entities inside of these closets, which don't belong to any animatronics that we know of. It is also not our only essential book evidence. Didophobia is a story from the 8th edition of Tales of the Pizzaplex, and there's another relevant book in this edition that's called B7-2. At first glance, B7-2 merely acts as a continuation of the story B7 from the 2nd edition of Tales of the Pizzaplex. In B7, a kid named Billy became so obsessed with being an animatronic that he acted like one, treated himself like one, and eventually underwent surgeries to become akin to one. However, when you look closely at B7-2, Billy's narrative becomes so much more than that. His story acts as a near-perfect parallel to Dave's. Billy's favorite show as a child was Freddy and Friends, and Dave can watch Fredbear and Friends in FNaF 4. Billy's grandmother owns a grandfather clock, and there's a grandfather clock in the Afton house. Billy's outfits are also predominantly black and gray. His eyes are a pure black from a previous surgery. He had medical care from an incident he had when he was 3 years old. Quote, he saw the floor of his home, and he remembered lying on it, crying. B7-2 literally begins with Billy awakening from a coma a crushing incident put him into, and Dave was in a coma after the bite. And from another quote in the book, "You're a big deal," he said. "Everyone's talking about you." Billy frowned. Peter walked over and dropped into the brown chair. "Are you kidding? You're the robot boy who survived being crushed."
Now that we've connected the Runaway as Dave, can we go back to Midnight Motorist? We still have a lot more to cover. Like those footprints we see outside of Dave's window. Who do they belong to?
Well, they belong to none other than Golden Freddy, possessed by Cassidy. This would parallel exactly what we see in the FNaF movie, when Golden Freddy lures Abby out of the house. Also, we see this in the Fazbear Fright story, Coming Home, where Susie gets lured out by Chica every night, which is the animatronic she's associated with.
I guess that does make sense. But why would Cassidy lure Dave out of his house in the first place? For the same reason as in the FNaF movie?
Not quite. With the context of Midnight Motorist's 1987 place on the timeline, Cassidy lured Dave to the FNaF 2 location to show him the 5 DCI bodies. William's statement of "he'll be sorry when he gets back" foreshadows what happens next. As Dave would already be going through the fear experiments, he's not discussing that as a punishment.
If only we had some actual concrete evidence that Dave was alive during this point.
It's funny you mention that because we actually do. In the survival logbook, Cassidy asks Dave questions in order to help him remember his previous life. One of these questions reads, "Was your favorite ride the carousel?" This is important because the only seen carousel in any FNaF location is the one in FNaF 2, which not only proves that Dave has been to the location multiple times, but also was out and roaming around in the year 1987.
Past FNaF 6, a group of theorists in the FNaF community recently discovered that the number 14 is repeated throughout UCN. This began when they noticed that the 14th locker in Toy Chica's high school years is slanted, just like the 14th animatronic on the UCN roster, Golden Freddy. The 15th animatronic is Springtrap, and Toy Chica, who is a character meant to represent William, leans on the 15th locker. There are also 14 stars on UCN's FNaF 4 map, one of which is brighter than the rest. This, along with the fact that the game's 14th and final intermission scene is Golden Freddy twitching, implies a heavy connection between him and the number 14. Those aren't even the only connections to the number 14 in FNaF. The FNaF World title screen has 14 characters on it, with the 14th being the crying child character.
The Foxy grid, which is how Hyperdroid found Dave's name, has the rose fade away in number 14.
But what does this have to do with our theory?
The file name of the last secret of Midnight Motorist, the Mound, is named Backdrop 14, the original burial site for Dave's body. In 5 Laps at Freddy's, hidden underneath the mound, we see some text that reads, "No secret lore here." This isn't a troll message. There literally is nothing in the burial site, because Dave was put back together. This is even hinted in the trailer for Curse of Fredbear, where we see Fredbear burst out of the ground. We believe that the number 14 is so important because it represents the number of deaths in the FNaF franchise, with the 14th being the one you should not have killed. The 14 victims point is elaborated on earlier in the FNaF Pizzeria Simulator introduction, which shows 3 sets of kids. The first set has 3 kids, the next set has 5 kids, and the final set has 5 kids again. The 2 sets of 5 kids are clearly supposed to represent the MCI and the DCI, which would mean the first set would have to represent Dave, Charlie, and Elizabeth. This adds up to 13 victims, with round 4 glitching before it can show the 14th kid.
Hold on. You just mentioned that the DCI included 5 kids, and that does seem to be the case when you first glance at the bodies and save them. But, as others have mentioned, there are 6 pools of blood instead of 5, implying that there's another victim we're missing. So why don't we see that 6th body?
Because that 6th body is inside the Golden Freddy suit. What we're proposing is that William killed the DCI kids in FNaF 2, and his son was shown these bodies later that night, prompting William to put his son inside the very same animatronic that not only killed him the first time, but led him to the FNaF 2 location. And we even have a voice line from Phone Guy, or Ralph, that supports this in FNaF 2.
Someone used one of the suits. We had a spare in the back, a yellow one. Someone used it. Now none of them are acting right.
This voice line comes from the call on none other than Night 6, the same night that Withered Golden Freddy becomes active. Many have claimed that this call is referring to the Spring Bonnie suit William used to kill the DCI, but that idea doesn't seem to align with Ralph's reaction. He presents the situation as a separate event, as though something else had happened.
Like Dave's body being found.
Ralph also clarifies that they had a spare in the back, not some spares in the back, which would be the case if both the Spring Bonnie suit and the Golden Freddy suit were there. Save Them supports this by only showing a Golden Freddy suit, and so does the fact that the Spring Bonnie suit was implied to be left in the FNaF 1 safe room following the MCI. Dave being killed in the Golden Freddy suit explains the problem with him dying in a hospital bed, but still somehow possessing the animatronic. It's not a result of a plot contrivance, he literally died in that suit. It additionally explains why when you type 1987 in FNaF 1's custom night menu, you get a Golden Freddy jump scare. This is because that's the year that Dave dies and possesses the animatronic.
You know, all of that makes sense, especially since in the FNaF movie, Garrett, who is Dave's movie counterpart, is killed by William in the year 1987 too. And while we're back on the topic of the FNaF movie, we previously connected Abby being lured out by Golden Freddy to Midnight Motorist. But we didn't mention how this scenario further parallels our theory by not only having Michael's sibling lured out by Golden Freddy, but having them lured into a pizzeria and to their attempted spring locking by William.
The game doesn't show the 14th kid because we've already seen them as the first. Dave is the first child in the series to die, as well as the last, or the 14th.
We can go even further with that. The 14th victim associated with Round 4 of FNaF 6 directly connects with Midnight Motorist. The entrance to the secret part of the minigame is at none other than Lap 4.
Something important to note is that Golden Freddy isn't actually in the UCN roster, it's Withered Golden Freddy, the exact suit that Dave was killed in. Also, when you attempt to death coin him, you're not just given a jump scare, you're given specifically a Fredbear jump scare, an animatronic only associated with Dave. That's right, Midnight Motorist is the backstory of the 14th victim, Dave, William's own son that he killed, the one he shouldn't have killed. As a small side note, something interesting we noticed is that Dave's Happiest Day cake has 3 candles. This implies he's 3, and it's supported by the fact that his toys are stated to be for children 3 and up in the logbook. Additionally, Tyler Stanton from The Cliffs, a narrative parallel to Dave since his father purchases a plush Freddy toy to watch over him, is turning 3 like Dave would, on his birthday. Curse of Fredbear, on the other hand, implies that Dave is 7 by showing his cake as having 7 candles. From Didophobia, Rory is supposed to be a parallel to whoever goes through the fear experiments and begins them when he is 7. Our theory explains this because he would have died in 1983 when he was 3, and then put back together and die in 1987 when he would have been 7. You can even argue that this cake implies that Dave died the second time on his birthday, setting Midnight Motorist as the 4th anniversary for the bite, which would add further context of why specifically Michael tells William to leave him alone for the night, and that he's had a rough day. Of course he has. It's the anniversary of when he would have gone and bit. It would also make William an even worse person by killing his kid on his birthday, and would further explain Dave's connection to birthday parties and give him an extra reason to be so vengeful. Let's go back to Toy Chica's high school years, which is heavily implied to show the lure descriptions of some of the FNaF victims. The last kid that she lures is widely agreed upon to be that of the one you should not have killed, because he's the last one we see and is represented as Pigpatch, who's a mediocre melody. And as we know, the vengeful spirit talks through the mediocre melodies, and as you'll see in a second, Pigpatch's description perfectly matches what happened the night Dave was killed. Although, before we play this, keep in mind that Toy Chica's high school years is supposed to be a metaphor, using terms like high school and home as stand-ins for other places like the Freddy's location. I mean, Twisted Wolf, who is supposed to represent Susie, because the Toy Chica luring him with his dead dog is said to be lured into her home. All of the first 4 victims are actually lured into her home, which is implied to be at Freddy's, William's home. On the other hand, the puppet, who is most likely supposed to represent Charlie, is lured at his home, which, since it represents Charlie, would be Fredbear's, since that's Henry's home. Pigpatch, on the other hand, is lured at an ambiguous place. Cue the tape.
Look at that snout. Looks aren't everything. He'll be mine by the end of the day. I just know it. I'll just wait for him after school, throw a bag over his head, hit him with a shovel, and drag him into the back of my car. Then, when he wakes up, I'll tell him that someone was trying to kidnap and kill him. I don't know, Balloon Boy maybe. And then I'll tell him that I rescued him. He'll fall for me immediately. There is only one thing that could possibly go wrong.
We believe this is supposed to show us that after Dave came back home after seeing the bodies, William hit him with a shovel and forced him inside the back of his car while driving him back to the FNaF 2 location. When Dave woke up, he found himself trapped in the withered Golden Freddy suit, with William pretending to be rescuing him from a murder. This is where something goes wrong. Whether it's Dave's tears or something else, the suit fails and kills him inside. Notice how every cutscene ends with "there's only one thing that could possibly go wrong." This line not only builds up until the release at the final minigame, where William makes his worst mistake, his accidental kill, but also isn't the first time we've seen this line. The first time we've seen this line of something going wrong is in FNaF World's intro, from Final Speaker to the crying child.
The Bear of Vengeance minigame, on the other hand, shows a rival relationship between a bear and a fox. Many believe that this is a parallel to Dave and Michael's relationship during FNaF 4. Michael, who would be represented by the fox, constantly torments the helpless Dave, who would be represented by the bear. This is furthered by the fact that the fox is an ally who happens to be Mangle. As we see in FNaF 4, the only toy that Elizabeth owns is a Mangle toy, which implies that Mangle is representing her here. The minigame is also called Bear of Vengeance, and at the end of it, the bear becomes vengeful, vowing to pursue the fox wherever he has fled to. Aside from the clear parallels of situations siblings would put themselves in, like the bear being forced to make breakfast for the fox as punishment, the fox decides to attack the bear on his birthday, and is a favorite television show as well. Even though Dave went through the FNaF 4 experiments, he gave Michael dreams about it during FNaF 1. That's why the FNaF 1 phone calls show up in the background of FNaF 4. And why Michael can accurately draw Nightmare Fredbear. Something that supports this is that, according to Sister Location's Break Your Room app, Nightmare Fredbear and Nightmare aren't actual characters involved in the experiments. Instead, they're manifestations that the crying child made to torment Michael during the nights of FNaF 1. This is further shown in Didophobia, which shows the Nightmare animatronics, but does not mention Nightmare Fredbear and Nightmare.
This matches up with what we see in the FNaF movie, where Mike Schmidt has constant nightmares about his brother while working as a security guard.
However, Michael makes his amends, which is why Dave's resentment towards him dies. The same can't be said for William, who not only killed his friends, but put him back together just to kill him again anyway.
The central theme of UCN is called isopterophobia, which is defined as the unhealthy fear of mirrors. When this game first came out, we assumed that this meant William's actions being reflected back to him, but now that we've successfully solved the crying child's name, we know this isn't true anymore. In Hyperdroid's video, the name Dave was found by reflecting EVAD with the mirror in the survival logbook, while Cassidy was found using a word search. The logbook also had constant references to reflection and reflecting. Recall isopterophobia, the fear of mirrors. Isopterophobia is the same song that also has a clock ticking in the background, which are only associated with Dave, as clocks are what need to be collected in order to complete his happiest day in FNaF world. This is further enforced by 2 more of the UCN OST that have some relation to FNaF 4 or Dreams, Sleep No More and Where Dreams Die.
The OST, in the same way that so many lines in UCN are from the nightmares recalling the experiments, also suggests Dave Toyshank.
We even have lines that directly respond to William's lines as the Fredbear plush.
We know who our friends are, and you are not one of them.
That's not the end of Nightmare Fredbear's lines, though, and we believe this one is more important.
Let me put you back together, then take you apart all over again.
That line is most significant because what Nightmare Fredbear says is precisely what William does. He puts Dave back together just to take him apart all over again.
Another line we want to point out is one of the Vengeful spirit lines said by Nedbear, where he states,
"This is how it feels, and you get to experience it over and over and over again, forever. I will never let you leave."
Nedbear's line wouldn't make sense if it referred to death, because that is something William is clearly familiar with. Instead, we believe that it refers specifically to the gameplay from FNaF 4, or in other words, the idea of being someone's puppet that is tormented by animatronics created by the individual in control. We've already talked about how the girl with the finger trap was Charlie, but another character from FNaF 4 with a lot of discussion around them is a toy collector girl, or the girl with a red bow, blonde hair, blue eyes, and a pink shirt, that, coupled with her appearance and her collection of toys that go along with the mango in Elizabeth's bedroom, have led many to suggest that's her. However, her appearance also happens to match Susie's appearance. Even her pose matches Susie, since she shares withered Chica's exact pose. We believe that the reason the Fredbear plush looks at Susie is to foreshadow her death, and this actually doesn't contradict our theory of the finger trap girl being Charlie. It's left ambiguous whether Plush Bear is staring at her or not, since there's a car blocking his pupils from being seen. Susie being the toy collector girl in FNaF 4 would additionally make her line in UCN make sense.
I have seen him, the one you shouldn't have killed.
Its inclusion, and the fact that it's specifically emphasized, shows that it's unique to Susie, who would have seen Dave alive if she were the toy collector girl.
Susie's line also means that every mention of the one you should not have killed is deeply related to FNaF 4. In the Bear of Vengeance minigame, Mango represents Elizabeth and a Mango toy in her room. Susie met Dave in FNaF 4, and the final 2 mentions are Nightmare Freddy and Jacko Chica, whose connections to FNaF 4 are the most obvious. Dave being the vengeful spirit also gives us an explanation for this photo of Cassidy from Security Breach with her in the FNaF 4 bed. It's trying to tell us that she doesn't take Dave's place.
What is that referring to?
Everything. We've constantly been forcing Cassidy into Dave's role of the one you shouldn't have killed, putting her in scenarios where she's never been, when that's never been the case. And we can even get more proof. Cassidy isn't implied to be vengeful. If anything, it's implied she's the opposite. In the Fazbear Fright story, The New Kid, a kid named Kelsey is the titular new kid at school, which a character named Devin gets jealous of and accidentally kills in the Golden Freddy suit. Later, when he goes back to check on the body, he sees a body with black curly hair rather than Kelsey's blonde hair, and then is killed by it. A few days later, Kelsey shows up at school meeting new kids, completely unharmed. This story implies that Cassidy is Kelsey with the black curly hair, but why does she go as a boy? Because the Golden Freddy suit is a boy. It's stated by Devin that Kelsey oddly looks like the suit with his blonde hair. When you take the previous into account, it becomes more apparent. The blonde hair represents the golden part of Golden Freddy. The blue eyes represent the blue eyes that Golden Freddy would originally have, and the male gender represents that Golden Freddy is a male animatronic. This form that Cassidy takes is literally a human version of Golden Freddy. Anyways, the reason why this is important is that Kelsey's views on justice are heavily exemplified, and it goes completely against the views of the Vengeful Spirit. He is very against the idea of payback and revenge, and only sees justice as a way of balancing the scales, in a way that the bad doesn't outweigh the good. If anything, it seems by going with Cassidy's implied personality that Cassidy in the FNaF movie is represented by Abby, while Dave is represented by Garrett. It's also interesting that Abby is the only character in the FNaF movie with overalls, which could have been picked to pay homage to Cassidy's fanon design. This means that the Vengeful Spirit Kid is supposed to be a stand-in, most likely to not spoil the surprise behind the identity of the UCN controller, which is something we've even seen in the novels, since Michael Brooks is the Golden Freddy Kid there. On the topic of the FNaF movie, Scott has expressly made the identity of the one you should not have killed a boy in that universe, and others, including the Silver Eyes and the original Frights. Let's also look at the face of the one you shouldn't have killed. His haircut matches Dave's exact haircut, and the original photo is of Scott Cawthon's kid, who has brown hair, just like Dave. For some reason, a lot of people in the FNaF community commonly argue that the Vengeful Spirit's face doesn't matter, and proceed to cite a post Scott made. Along these same lines, keep in mind that I do tend to use pictures of me and my family in the games, just because they are so readily available. My little boy Jason is the face of the one you should not have killed in UCN. The interpretation of this meaning that the face is unimportant is a complete misinterpretation, and ignores the context of the entire post. The post was only about whether Scott Cawthon himself was actually canon to the games, because of the rogue indie developer mentioned in Help Wanted, followed by a picture of Scott's face. Attributing this same context to the UCN example he mentioned just states that Jason Cawthon is not literally the one you should have killed. That's how it's supposed to be interpreted, rather than that the face should be ignored and has no relevance on the lore.
From a narrative perspective, FNaF UCN acts as a direct parallel to the experiments Dave was put through during the events of FNaF 4. This makes the last game to happen chronologically a parallel to the first game happening chronologically, the prologue and epilogue to the main story. Do you want to know what else acts as the perfect parallel? If Dave is the one you should not have killed, then he would be the spirit that caused William's spring-locking and death, the same way that William spring-locked and caused the death of him. This is supported by the encyclopedia showing a picture of the crying child as a ghost, whose appearance matches the ghost children's sprites in both Follow Me and Happiest Day. Dave would be from the same group of kids.
Let's go back to the point of Dave causing William's spring locking for a second. That's it. That's why it's raining in Midnight Motorist, to parallel Follow Me. You see, in Follow Me, it's raining hard, and some of the rain seeps through the roof, causing William's spring locking. This is the exact same thing that happened to Dave. The rain caused his spring locking. They're exact parallels. We even get more context on Dave's involvement in William's spring locking in one of the Candy Cadet stories.
Now I will tell you a story about a little boy. He had a red snake that he kept in a metal cage, whose hunger could not be satisfied. One day, the boy found 5 baby kittens outside his house. He brought them inside and kept them in a shoebox. He knew that the snake might kill them, but could not bring himself to get rid of the snake. He knew that if he chose one kitten to feed to the snake, it might be satisfied, but he could not choose. So, he went to bed, leaving the cage open. The snake went to the shoebox, chose a kitten at random, and ate it. After 5 nights had gone by, the boy was full of regret, and cut snake open. He pieced the remains together, and put the kitten back into the shoebox.
Okay, so Cassidy and the MCI end up in the Funtime animatronics, eventually becoming Molten Freddy in FNaF 6. So what happened to Dave? For some reason, Scott chose Lefty, an animatronic meant to house the puppet, to be a bear, and not just a bear animatronic, but as Dual Process Theory mentioned, a bear animatronic with a golden eye. Lefty even has a black and gray color scheme, exactly like the Crying Child, and has these metallic rods that all the Rockstars and Fredbear has. What's more, in the back alley photo of Lefty, the animatronic's pose is identical to Golden Freddy's in all previous iterations of the games. We can even get deeper. Have you seen this poster before? This poster is thought to represent the Afton family.
Many people tend to focus on the fact that Michael is shown to be William's puppet, which is supported by the fact he's implied to look similar to him. There's also William and Vanessa's relationship in the FNaF movie, being an assumed parallel to William and Mike's relationship in the games. We think there's something more than that in this poster, though. Dave isn't represented as a crying child or anything that would symbolize sadness. Rather, he's represented by a smiling bear with a party hat.
Not only does it show that Dave is a vengeful spirit, but the poster is shown in Lefty's back alleyway shot, as well as the puppet poster. You see, the Scrap animatronics always have posters relating to them in their shots, like Scrap Baby with the clown poster behind her. In FNaF 6, Lefty's only line is shh, which has stumped theorists for years. However, for some reason, Lefty is given actual lines in UCN, where Scott Cawthon chose to hire a different actor for Puppet and Lefty. This is notable considering the puppet and subsequently the soul force Charlotte Emily are trapped inside of Lefty, so it was always assumed that Lefty was solely possessed by her. Not only that, but in the very same game, Scott hired the same voice actors for Funtime Freddy and Molten Freddy, and Circus Baby and Scrap Baby. There's also some substantial dissonance with Lefty's UCN voice lines compared to the puppets.
Shh. I've been looking for you, and now I will never let you go.
I don't hate you, but you need to stay out of my way.
If you knew nothing about these characters, you'd automatically assume that they were two separate ones, as their lines are direct opposites. Charlie wants William to stay out of her way, likely because she's preoccupied with something more important, like her involvement in setting up Happiest Day. On the other hand, Lefty wants William to the point of going out of his way to look for him, which even parallels all the other Vengeful Spirit mediocre melody lines.
I will hold you here. I will keep you here.
I will never let you leave.
I will never let you leave, and now I will never let you go.
So how did Dave get into Lefty in the first place? Well, we believe after Follow Me, Dave's soul attached itself to the puppet. An important line is,
He tried to release you. He tried to release us. But I'm not gonna let that happen. I will hold you here. I will keep you here. No matter how many times they burn us.
The line, no matter how many times they burn us, implies that the Vengeful Spirit has been through multiple fires, and if he was inside the Fun Times and later Molten Freddy, the only fire he'd experienced is the FNaF 6 one, not the FNaF 3 one. Speaking of FNaF 3, Springtrap is not the only real animatronic that isn't a hallucination in it. The puppet also shows up, which we see as real by the reflection in the floor. The puppet has been chasing William down. This itself is also very narratively fitting because the puppet and Dave share a lot of design details. We can also argue that Dave and Charlie are the only remaining mainline characters, not only because we don't see a Lefty burning scene, but also because of UCN and Security Breach. I mean, it explains why the icon for UCN is Nightmare On. When the FNaF 6 fire occurred, he was possessing the puppet. Security Breach heavily implies that Dave and Charlie are still around, mostly from a conversation shown through sticky notes from the sticky note room. The door to this room is named Charlie Door in the files, and this drawing is labeled All My Friends. There are 7 kids in this drawing, like the 7 victims of Toy Chica's high school years. The area around the sticky note room is also littered with Nightmare staff bots, and that isn't even mentioning all of the Nightmare On plushies that surround a Pizzaplex in ruin, and how this room is connected to staff bots resembling the Afton family. There's one more drawing of importance in this room, which is a drawing of a house and arrows that imply someone is walking away from it. This drawing is heavily reminiscent of the Runaway and what caused the footprints in Midnight Motorist. These are the final nail in the coffin that Dave is a Runaway, and the one you shouldn't have killed. And I think we're done. Now all you know how we solved Midnight Motorist. Actually.
Jeez, this was a long video.
Yeah, but it was important, and now that this video is finished, we have room for more theories. I guess you could say, room for one more.
Anyway, Andre's right. This video was long because it's important, and because we're pretty confident in it. I mean, it explains a lot of the unsolved mysteries in FNaF. Take a look at everything and answers yourselves.
Not only that, but our theory pieces itself together like a puzzle. Every character in Midnight Motorist has a purpose under it, and it doesn't designate anyone as something new or random. Every character is someone that we've met before and someone that should be there.
When looked at from a broader perspective, almost every FNaF mystery revolves around the bite victim. If we were to be misinterpreting something, it would have to be something significant with Dave. Our theory explains every weird Golden Freddy dynamic and association, like his association with the year 1987 and the number 14, but it also explains every minigame in FNaF 6.
Plus, our theory can be used to explain why Andrew was included as the 6th victim in the books. It wasn't for him to be Toy Shank, but rather to encourage the fanbase into considering a secret victim as Toy Shank. His inclusion in Frights is completely out of place given UCN's release date. Scott wouldn't answer the question of who the most influential spirit was years with some random kid introduced in a book over the games.
Dave is the one he should not have killed, would provide so much narrative satisfaction. It wouldn't make sense for this kid's identity to be random spirit number 6, but the role would have a different significance if he was William's son.
It would mean that the entire FNaF story is centered around Dave, and his death not only causing William to kill Charlie and begin the cycle, but also beginning Michael's character arc of remorse for the bite and all that followed. The story starts with Dave
and ends with Dave.
I put the brain in the robot, you know. You shouldn't have been a spoiled brat. You see, I always get what I want, and I want you to make me a Krabby Patty!
Response, why don't you ask me later?
What? What?
Get welded.
Wait! I command you make me a Krabby Patty!
I don't wanna